What's up, everyone? Wave here. Today we got this one right here. Why does everyone hate Forspoken? Let's react it.
What's up guys, it's ENDYMION, and for the past few days I've been playing the latest PlayStation exclusive Forspoken, and as I'm sure many of you have seen, the game is getting torn to shreds by the internet. But why? What happened to this game? Who's to blame? And finally, do I think it's worth buying? Well,
I absolutely don't understand the high price on this game. Like,
let's begin.
it's not even 60, it's 70 bucks on Steam, I think.
Look at its inception. Forspoken is very clearly a game that's based on ideas that date back to a concept trailer called Agni's Philosophy. That tech demo was created by Square Enix to showcase the power of their new Luminous engine, as well as what their developers could in theory create on PlayStation 4 during that system's release. Many of the concepts of Agni's philosophy seem to be present in Forspoken. From the fantasy meets Middle Eastern environments, a female protagonist surrounded by religious zealots, and towering monsters that look both deadly yet strangely glorious. That tech demo's engine, dubbed the Luminous engine, would end up being used to bring Final Fantasy XV to life, which was an extremely successful release for Square Enix, and it was directed by Hajime Tabata, who also directed Crisis Core. After that game's release, Tabata would create a new studio
It still looks good to visit.
Square Enix that would harness the power of the Luminous engine for a new game. This new studio, dubbed Luminous Productions, would take that Agni Philosophy tech demo and then expand it into a full game. That's how Forspoken came to be, although Tabata would end up leaving the company during Forspoken's development to go on to other games and franchises. While I don't think Forspoken is amazing by any means, I don't think it's awful either, but it definitely bears the scars.
Like, I think the gameplay in general is quite decent, above average even.
Scars of a troubled development, which is sadly becoming way too common these days. It also has a very low audience score, but like always, these audience scores can be done by anyone. I mean, how many of these people actually played the game? It's always suspicious.
Bro, but you can't even take Metascore, like, seriously. Like, I don't know about you, but I would never look at like game critics themselves because they don't have any idea how to actually test those games.
I mean, how many of these people actually played the game? It's always
like they can't grasp the essence.
Suspicious.
They don't get it.
But then again, not every game can be universally loved, like Cory in the House on Nintendo DS, I guess. Anyway, I would describe Forspoken as an open-world action RPG where you play as a Final Fantasy magic-based character. It's kind of what I would imagine an open-world game would play like if you played as Terra from Final Fantasy VI. Surprisingly, however, the game Forspoken reminded me the most of wasn't Final Fantasy or some Ubisoft open world. In fact, Forspoken, to me anyway, feels like I'm playing a medieval fantasy version of Sucker Punch's Infamous series. Infamous, for those who've played it, is a superhero action-adventure game where you run around a city dealing
that was so nostalgic. Like, I haven't heard about this game since years, man. Like,
justice and
such a long time ago.
Rooftops. I love those games, and a lot of Forspoken's gameplay feels similar to Infamous Second Son in particular. The way you can glide across the world, it feels like an updated version of the Neon superpower in Second Son. You can blast enemies with spells, which feels very similar to using the smoke or...
And the movement itself feels good in that game.
Electricity powers depending on which Infamous game you've played.
But that's not the problem.
One of the best things about Forspoken so far anyway is the verticality of its open world. Most open worlds I've played outside of maybe Insomniac's Spider-Man, they all feel very ground level. And while this is not a bad thing, that emphasis on verticality does help Forspoken in differing itself by allowing you to glide up mountains and jump across cool landscapes with crazy speed. It's really cool. I'm also digging the magical...
The problem I have with this kind of level design, maybe it's just a completely subjective thing, is that when you go over that world, it feels so fucking empty. Like, it is the biggest problem of open world games. Why does it feel so empty? Like, Elden Ring kinda solved it a bit, but it still has this problem. Like, I don't think any open world game can get rid of that, you know?
Combat, which is understandably very flashy. It's fun to blast enemies and see them fly around like ragdolls, and there's a surprising level of depth to the amount of spells, even from the get-go. There's also activities I'm enjoying more than I thought I would, like the labyrinths. They're simple, I mean, they're just rooms of enemies you kill and then progress through, but I enjoy them because they're full of loot and they have big enemies to kill at their climax. That activity in particular, it gave me Diablo vibes, and I enjoyed clearing these out to see what new gear I could find. And while the game doesn't necessarily revolutionize the open world genre like
because in my opinion, like Diablo 3 and 2, they made those item drops or like the progress like really satisfying. It's insane, especially with the sounds. Like it's pretty underrated.
Elden Ring did. I can't deny that I'm having fun. As for the opening of the game, Forspoken is a mixed bag, but I think it does well enough to establish what's going on. But to be honest, I find most open world games have lackluster beginnings, unless they're called Skyrim.
Finally awake.
One thing I do find annoying is how often Forspoken relies on fading to black. I mean, once or twice is fine, but it happens almost constantly, which is bizarre to me. Why they didn't just cut to another scene seamlessly is puzzling, but I think it has to do with the Luminous engine.
Finally awake.
That thing made Final Fantasy XV apparently a living hell to develop, and Forspoken is no doubt the same thing. But the fading to black does get a little obnoxious, and at least early on the side quests are also very cookie cutter. But to be honest, what open world game these days actually has good optional side content? Witcher 3 sure, and Skyrim as well, but everything else is pretty much forgettable that I can think of. And unfortunately
yeah, because it's all utter garbage.
Forspoken is like every other modern open world game in that regard. While I don't think Forspoken is gonna win any awards or anything, I do think its story is decent so far. The gist is that you're an orphan named Frey who squats in an abandoned apartment with her cat Homer. Frey gets in trouble with the law, she's then given a second chance by the judge, and after an altercation with a gang, Frey, well, she just loses everything. The game does a really good job at making me understand that Frey's life is just awful. I mean, as soon as I saw the Christmas lights in the apartment, I knew this girl was broke as hell. Anyway, Frey is left homeless and alone, and then she's lured into a nearby building by some magical entity, where she finds a bracelet, and then she's thrusted into Athia, where the game takes place proper. In a lot of ways, Forspoken is basically an isekai, which is a Japanese genre where an ordinary person is whisked away into another world. Although, having not beaten the game or anything, I predict Frey is probably from Athia.
The intro was not bad, but not good either. Like, decent.
And her parents left her in New York for some reason, but I can only guess as of right now, but I would bet money that I'm right. The whole gist of the story so far...
if it's bad, you will still remember it, or if it's like incredibly well done, you still remember it. But if it's just decent, you won't remember it at all, you know?
Is that the world has been destroyed by something called the Break, which reduces all living things to ash, and whatever survives is corrupted into monsters or worse. Frey, however, is immune to all of this, and because of that, she's able to dive out into the open world and do all the open world things you expect. While Forspoken doesn't reinvent the wheel when it comes to open world games, it's not a terrible game by any stretch in my opinion either.
I don't like the numbers in Forspoken when you like attack shit. The numbers themselves, they don't feel right.
Reminds me of Horizon Forbidden West in ways.
It's just
and
a small
what I mean
thing,
by that is that you play a character that is seen as a savior by those around them.
And when she got that outfit, that looked dope, man. Especially in game.
You're constantly collecting stuff to make new things, but Forspoken does, especially for being a PS5 next-gen only game, not really live up to its own potential. I think this is again because of that Luminous engine and that Hajime Tabata left the studio during development. That guy was instrumental in making Final Fantasy XV exist after that game's troubled development, and Forspoken is yet another example of this. But I can't deny that it's a fun action RPG where you can glide across landscapes, blasting enemies into dust and collecting stuff. Of course, that doesn't mean that Forspoken's strengths outweigh its weaknesses. It's like for every cool idea or interesting moment, there's something else that is not as good to counterweight it. And like I said,
like all this shit just doesn't explain the insane price this game has. Like, Honestly, I would put this at with something like a $40 title, not 60, not 70. But it's just utter insanity.
Beginning is not the best, and it takes a while before things really start to open up. The game also has graphical issues like pop-in and weird lighting effects, which unfortunately is not unique to this game, with basically every modern game releasing having...
Yeah, those bugs are not that bad. Like, it's something which will get solved eventually, but yeah, I overlook that shit. Like, because that's something which happens in every game. It's insane.
Problems at launch these days. It's more an underlying
I
sickness
got
the
numb.
entire industry keeps struggling with as
bugs.
opposed to being unique to this game, unfortunately. And oddly enough, there's no day or night cycle, which I'm not against, mind you, but just thought I'd say
Oh, no. This is not good at all. The day and night cycle in so many games make it, especially in open world titles. Like, what?
that you know in case you care. But honestly, I find nighttime in most open world games to be kind of ugly, so if it's
Really?
just daytime, I'm fine with it.
For me, it's the opposite. Like,
One problem I have with Forspoken and really so many other games is how often developers show a product to look one way only to completely alter it later. Besides this game, the same can be said about Watch Dogs, Final Fantasy
Yeah.
15,
especially Watch Dogs. I can still remember that good ass trailer back in the day. The trailer, the leak. Was it? It was a gameplay trailer even, and they showed it how clean it looked, like how many NPCs were walking, how good the graphics were. But in the end, it didn't look like near that shit. It's insane.
Cyberpunk, and so many others. There's too many vertical slice concept trailers that are almost never lived up to, and again, this isn't a Forspoken problem, but an industry-wide one. It's just that this game is the most current example of this annoying trend that devs and publishers just need to stop doing. Also, Forspoken's world does feel lifeless in a way, but
Yep.
the lore reasoning behind it is that the break has consumed everything. Although it's just a convenient way to have less things on screen. It's similar to the Batman Arkham games finding excuses to have civilians stay inside so that they don't have to render them. There's also a main town that's full of citizens, and this is where you can pick up side quests and interact with all kinds of people. There are so many games that do this, from Monster Hunter or the countless JRPGs that exist these days. So Forspoken having a hub area, it's not really any different. It's fine, of course, but again,
Even
it's
the
another
city, the NPCs,
trend that I'm not that fond of
it looks lifeless. Still.
in any game, really. However, I do enjoy the architecture, and I do think the outfit designs for the more important characters to be really refreshing. Like, look at these council people. They look really cool. Another thing so far
I
that I'm
don't
really
know.
enjoying are the boss battles, with the first two being standout moments in the early hours. The dragon fight was dope, and it felt like a Final Fantasy moment to me. There's also this
Really?
fight against a fire knight a
The
bit
dragon fight
later
was
on that
decent.
is really cool too, where you have to destroy the wings in order to make it vulnerable. I'm excited to see what else is out there, but like I said, there are bright spots amongst the darkness with this game. I also enjoy the monster designs too, with them having this
This one is
mutated
good.
teeth-like design to them. It kind of reminds me of the gaping dragon from Dark Souls
Yep.
in a way. Another
Got
thing
the
I
same
do
thought.
enjoy is the crafting system, which allows you to place various buffs and upgrades onto your gear. And as you explore, you'll discover new effects that you can then implement. You can also customize your nails for different effects by painting magic glyphs onto your fingers. It's a unique alternative to what other games do, so it's pretty cool, and I'll give them credit for that. And now that I've gotten
Yeah,
what I've
that's
enjoyed so far out of the way, it's time to delve into the internet's takes, and a video of mine wouldn't be complete without some good old-fashioned modern game journalism. So let's look at Polygon's review, where they unsurprisingly injected
Yep.
identity politics into the discussion because Polygon continues to impress me with how awful their takes are. The reviewer, Grayson Morley, went on to say in their review, quote, "Before I wrap up, let's spare a word for Frey, a notionally black protagonist who joins a growing trend in media of putting black people in worlds where race is inconsequential. Except the game is very insistent that Frey is a New Yorker, mysterious birth or no, spending her entire life up until this point, growing up in our decidedly non-fantasy world, where blackness is not a non-factor. Regrettably, Frey's identity is thinly written and awkwardly deployed as the story leans not only on stereotypical narratives but trauma as a plot device. An early plot point involves Frey holding the lifeless body of an Athian black girl with whom she has bonded, an image that, in the raceless world of Athia, doesn't carry the same weight it does in ours and Frey's. Initially, Frey is spurred to action, vowing revenge for the child's death, which led me to believe, optimistically, that the game was thinking about Frey's identity as more than just the sum of its repeated insistence of her love of kicks and the one time she says okay bet. Unfortunately, like everything in Forspoken, the death is quickly relegated to quip fodder as Frey jokingly calls the child's murderer the kitty killer herself. Which brings us back to square one, a two-dimensional foster kid with a rap sheet who swears so often you'd think she was paid by the mother effer herself, end quote. So, according to Polygon, Forspoken gets docked review points because the main character is black and no one in the game hates her or oppresses her because of it. Apparently, if you have a black character in your game, it means they have to fight racism always. Otherwise, why have a black character in the first place? Polygon continues to spew out these idiotic comments, but what can we expect from the social justice idiots over there? In the entire time that I played Forspoken, it's true that no one says anything about her being black because the people of Athia don't see Frey as a black woman, but simply that, a woman. The council even has a black woman on it. There's an Asian guy and even a white dude in power too. And I'm sure Grayson held his head in agony when he saw the white guy on the council because something toxic masculinity. If you couldn't tell, Polygon is trying to magically create a controversy where there isn't one. No one cares that Frey is black, and I'm sure the people of Athia couldn't care less either. Because they have more important things to worry about than identity politics, like whether they're going to starve to death or be reduced to ash by the incoming apocalypse. I just find it hilarious that Grayson Morley and his Polygon editors see black people as nothing but identity political piñatas for them to hit whenever a black person is involved. God, I hate Polygon.
This is racist itself, you know, from a left side.
But
it's insane.
Then, of course, there's the other big thing the internet is clowning on, which is the dialogue, and honestly, it's not that bad. I mean, at times it's not great, like that one infamous clip going around.
Did I just do that?
Well, definitely with my assistance.
I did not just do that.
We did.
I just moved shit with my mind.
Perhaps our connection has somehow awoken some abilities.
I just moved shit with my mind.
I just keep hearing I.
I just moved shit with my freaking mind! Yeah, okay, that is something I do now. I do magic, talk to sentient cuffs, kill jacked up beasts. You know what? I'll probably fly next.
Now you're just being ridiculous.
Oh, that's too far. Good to know there's a line.
If you could just master these new abilities, with my help, of course.
Did you not just see me take out that gnarly beast? Oh, bring it, you mangled monster.
But there's also some other clips that kind of work.
It's a bit unpleasant, but not that bad at all. Like, I can look over that shit.
If I'm being honest, like this clip here.
Certitude. Such righteous poise. Yet all is demon solid noise.
Shit, alright, if you're gonna rhyme everything, then just kill me now.
I mean, this isn't that bad in my opinion. Maybe my brain is broken, but in all honesty, this dialogue seems about on par with many other games and modern movies, especially Marvel and Star Wars, again, for better and worse. There's also some fun physical comedy too.
Looks like this is the place. Seems like it's seen better days.
Well, you're not going to find what you're looking for out here.
I know.
What?
Great start.
And the way this game is written dialogue-wise makes sense once you understand who came up with the world and everything. Firstly, we have Amy Hennig, who is the creator of the Uncharted series when she worked at Naughty Dog. A lot of Forspoken's dialogue actually feels very Uncharted-like, with the hero making quips during serious situations. Even the opening New York segment feels like an Uncharted moment with you running away and leaping over things while making fun of the bad guys. Then we have Gary Whitta, who wrote Star Wars Rogue One, and this is kind of where the westernized influences of Forspoken come together. And it's very apparent for good and for worse. The music is also composed partly by Bear McCreary, who did the God of War Norse Saga Games and Gary Scheinman, but I can't show you that music in fear of copyright because YouTube is dumb like that. But the music is fine. It's like God of War's in that it's honestly just typical background music.
Yeah,
fare.
it's just
Weirdly enough, Square Enix has tried in the past to create games with Western creators, but it's basically always failed in the past. I do think that Forspoken would have benefited more from Eastern writers over West,
True.
but for what it is, Forspoken's dialogue isn't terrible. Like, for example, here we have Frey talking to an old man, and they're saying whoosh to each other, and you're probably
like I got a feeling that the East just has like this high standard of quality. Like it's not only just about profit, but that they actually make something that people will enjoy. You know, I don't get like Ubisoft vibes from FromSoft or something like that, you know? Like I really admire FromSoft. It's insane.
thinking, that's terrible and cringe, right? But the context here is that the man she's speaking to has been living in the break for 20 years and his mind is almost completely gone. So his ability to communicate has been reduced to simple words. So while this may look cringe out of context, if you play the game, it makes sense. And that's where I kind of come to the whole internet hating Forspoken thing. I truly believe that a lot of what's being said about this game is being taken out of context in order to push narratives. Like that Voosh dialogue part, if that was posted on social media with no context, of course people would think it's awful. It's the same thing with that other clip that's circulating where Frey makes fun of Cuff and calls him a serial killer.
Destruction and corruption are forms of creation in themselves.
Wow, you sound like a serial killer.
What?
Destruction and corruption are beautiful forms of creation in themselves.
I don't sound like that.
You absolutely sound like that.
No, you absolutely sound like that. Yeah, see? Two can play at that game.
You're fucking...
Out of context, it seems weird, but if you played the game and then started to see what they were going for, which is Uncharted meets Infamous meets Final Fantasy, it starts to make sense, even though, yes, it doesn't always land. Look, I know I may sound like I'm defending Forspoken hard here, but the reality is I don't think it's a bad game. Of course, I also don't believe it's a masterpiece, and I definitely can understand valid criticism, like how you can't move when Cuff has questions, which is a bizarre choice that they should change.
Okay.
And you should also be able to change your magic challenges from your magic menu at any time too, but those are things that can be easily fixed. But if you follow the channel, you know that I don't sugarcoat things and just say what I think, and I honestly believe so far anyway that Forspoken is enjoyable and it has some interesting ideas too. Like its super fast movement and the combat that's just fun to do. Again, I'm not terribly far, I'm about 7 or 8 hours in, but I can't deny that I'm having fun and I'm enjoying it. But do I
it
think
looks
it's worth
fun. Like I've seen some videos, and but the thing is still that the price is not justified.
full price? Well, for me personally, I would say yes, but for others, my answer would be I think you should play the demo that's available first. If you end up vibing with the combat and the movement, I think
Maybe
there's enjoyment to
wait till the summer sale or something like that. Maybe you get like 20% off, 30% off, but the current price, man, it's just too insane.
add here.
I
However,
will
also
never agree with
understand
shit
that
like that.
Forspoken does not reinvent the open world genre in any crazy way outside of its movement. And I have a creeping suspicion that in the coming months or even years, people are going to look back on Forspoken and realize they were being kind of unfair towards it. I want to be fully transparent. I was not gifted a review copy or anything. I bought the game with my own money and I am playing it at launch. And so far
it worth it?
anyway, if I compare Forspoken to the endless open world games we have these days, it's very much in rhythm with the rest of them for better and for worse. I do plan to speak about the state of open world games soon, but I'll leave that for its own video. But do I believe I wasted my money on Forspoken? Honestly, no. I'm enjoying it. But then again, I enjoyed the Callisto Protocol too, and I tend to enjoy games that other people deem bad. So maybe my sense of enjoyment is busted, or maybe, and this is more likely, I just prefer to make
Bro, I would love to be like you, because being able to still enjoy modern games is something rare.
up my own mind and experience
I would love
things for
to enjoy
myself.
that shit
If
again.
you hate Forspoken but haven't played it, I think you should at least try the demo yourself. As far as being the latest game people are dogpiling on and ripping apart, I do think Forspoken doesn't deserve the nuclear level of hate that it's getting. It's definitely not a great game, but it's nowhere near as bad as most are making it out to be. If I had to give it an arbitrary numbered score because people enjoy having numbers to quantify the quality of things, I would give Forspoken a solid 7 at best so far. While it's not going to
7?
set the world on fire,
I get like 4 vibes.
it's just another
4 or 5.
open world game that at the very least brings some of its own ideas and differs itself with its crazy fast movement and Final Fantasy magic combat. I do believe, however, that if this game was labeled a Final Fantasy game and they just took the Agni Philosophy's design and just made that into its own game proper, this would have been much better received for sure. But I do think Frey is decent so far as a protagonist, and I think her actress Elle Balinska does a solid job with what she's given. Also, just wanted to point out that in a recent post by Elle Balinska, Sony and Square sent her a PS5 and a physical copy of Forspoken, but the PS5 they sent her is digital only, so she can't play the copy that they sent her, which I mean, you would think that they would know that. Why would you send a copy of the game when she can't even play the copy with her PS5? I don't know, just a weird thing I noticed, but anyways. If you enjoy big open world games with lots of stuff to collect and all the usual bells and whistles that come along with that sort of game, you'll probably enjoy Forspoken. But if you're looking for the next big thing like Elden Ring, this is definitely not it. And when I look at the review scores and see how these outlets are giving this game such a low score when it runs decently well and nothing
The thing as well is that Elden Ring just set such a high standard. Like, okay, I think Elden Ring is a good standard, a decent standard, not something like incredibly like it's nothing godlike, like how people like to see Elden Ring as, but it's a good standard, and the other games in the open world genre are just such utter garbage that it's that easy to beat, I guess. maybe care about your games a bit more.
Is busted, at least in my experience anyways, yet those same review sites gave other big games glowing reviews when they were completely unplayable at launch. Yeah, consider me skeptical with taking their opinions seriously. Anyway, that's my impression so far on Forspoken. It's a decent game with some solid gameplay systems that I'm sure will expand as I play more of it. I fully expect this game to have a warmer reception as time goes on, but for now, I truly do not consider this game to be a disaster like so many others are making it out to be. Am I wrong or am I right? Let me know in the comments. Forspoken.
There's some good opinions, but I just can't get on with the price. It's insane. But in general, it was a good video from a smaller YouTuber. Go support him, ENDYMIONtv, and I guess that's it. I really hope that you have enjoyed this video. I would really appreciate some comments, some like, and the support of a student. So support me as well. Like the sub is pretty important. I want to get the 1K someday, and I guess that's actually it. I guess see you next time. Wafer out.